Hello, welcome to the course SJPHY2B02 Mechanics 2. The contents of this course is taken from an Introduction to Mechanics by Kleppner and Kolenko. We'll continue to discuss topics from Module 2, Central Force Motion. In the last class, we have seen two alternative approaches to writing the energy equation. Whether you can write E equal to half mu V square plus U of R or half mu R dot square plus U effective R, where U effective R is the effective potential. So first equation, it depends on two coordinates R and theta, whereas the second equation depends only on the radial coordinates. So this essentially captures the radial motion, and as I said in the previous class, we will try to apply the energy diagram method to get some of the useful information pertaining to the radial motion in a central force field. So specifically, let's apply this method to the problem of non-interacting particles. Now, non-interacting particles is a common theme you find in many branches of physics. One of the classic examples could be a system of ideal gas, right? As you know, in ideal gas, the gas molecules do not interact with each other. That's the approximation on which this model is built. So, an ideal gas is a system of non-interacting particles. And this concept is also used as a first order approximation in many theoretical studies. For example, if you want to study the electronic properties of a material, of an atom. Okay, so you know that electron in an atom is confined within the atom, right? So here the electron is similar to a particle which is confined within a box, right? Just like electron cannot move out of the atom, a particle inside a box cannot move out of it, right? So there is a parallel between these two. So this kind of a model is known as particle in a box, and you will encounter this very frequently in your quantum mechanics course. So if you have a multi-electron atom, so this is similar to a multi-particle system, all the particles are confined within a box. As a first order approximation, you will discard the interaction between the particles. Like in your analysis, you do not include the interaction, because if you include all those interaction terms, the analysis is going to be very, very tedious. So you simplify your problem by discarding all the interactions. So essentially now you have a system of non-interacting particle, which is far more easy to model compared to your original problem. So you will find this theme very commonly in many branches of physics. Okay. So let's come back to our problem under study. Assume that you have two non-interacting particles m1 and m2 which move toward each other with velocities v1 and v2. Okay. So their paths are offset by a vertical distance b. So let's try to investigate this problem in terms of the equivalent one-body description. Okay. So their relative position R can be written as R1 minus R2. So the relative velocity V0 is nothing but R dot, which in terms of R1, R2 you can write as R1 dot minus R2 dot, which is nothing but V1 minus V2. So if the particles are moving with constant velocities, then their relative velocity is also going to be constant. And the energy of the system relative to the center of mass is given by E equal to the kinetic energy half mu V0 square, where mu is the reduced mass of the one body system, of the two body system, plus the potential energy U of R. In the previous class we have seen if the motion takes place in a central force field, then by default the total energy is a constant. Now since we are dealing with non-interacting particles, interaction potential U of R is going to be 0. So my total energy equal to half mu V naught square. Now, if you want to draw the energy diagram, we need to find the effective potential. And from our previous class, we know the expression for effective potential. U effective equal to L square by 2 mu R square plus U of R, where the first term represents the centrifugal potential. Since U of R equal to 0, U effective equal to L square by 2 mu R square. Now we need to find the value for L. So as I said in the beginning, you can write total energy using these two equations. Now if you follow the second equation, total energy E equal to half mu R dot square, the radial kinetic energy, plus the effective potential energy. The effective potential energy is given by this term. So my total energy can be written as half mu R dot square plus L square by 2 mu R square, which is nothing but, as I derived here, half mu V naught square. So if you look at this diagram, these two particles are moving towards each other. Let's freeze at the point where M1 and M2 pass each other. So this is that particular point, right? So here you can see that the distance between them is nothing but the vertical distance d. So R equal to B, and B is a constant. So R dot, or the derivative of R or derivative of B, is going to be 0 at this particular point. So let's rewrite this equation at this particular point. In first term, half mu R dot square, R dot is 0, so this term vanishes. So you have L square divided by 2 mu. Instead of R square, now you have B square equal to half mu V naught square. From this you can write L equal to mu B V naught. Now substitute in this expression, so the effective potential energy is given by half mu V naught square B square by R square. So you can see effective potential is a quadratic function of R. Now the kinetic energy associated with the radial motion. So this is the radial kinetic energy, right? K equal to half mu R dot square, or if you look at this expression, this is your K, this is the U effective, so you can write K equal to E minus U effective. Kinetic energy is the total energy minus the effective potential energy. Okay, so since you have all the expressions available, now you can plot them. So you can plot potential energy, kinetic energy and total energy as a function of R. So that's what we do here. And one thing you have to remember, the kinetic energy K equal to half mu R dot square, this can never be 0. Why? R dot square, this is a square term which can never be 0. Mu is the effective mass, no particle can have negative mass. So by default, your kinetic energy is always 0. So if you look at this expression, kinetic energy equal to E minus U effective, so your motion should be confined to the region where E minus U effective is always greater than 0. So this is the starting point. Now when you look at the graph, so U effective equal to half mu V naught square B square by R square. As I said, this is a quadratic function, so it's a parabola. Okay, so this is your effective potential. Then E equal to half mu V naught square. As I said, in the case of central force motion, by default total energy is a constant. So a constant function here is a straight line, right? So magnitude is constant. And kinetic energy is nothing but E minus U effective. So as I said, we are looking only at the region where E minus U effective is greater than 0, or total energy is greater than the effective potential energy. So this is our area of interest. Other than, and if you go to this region, You can see the effective potential energy is greater than the total energy. So this is the forbidden region and this is the allowed region for us. And difference between total energy and effective potential energy. So this height is the kinetic energy. So with this understanding, let's try to analyze this graph. So initially, let's start from at a very large R value. So here the energy, total energy is higher than the effective potential energy. This is perfectly valid. So you can assume that M1 is at origin and M2 at infinity. Okay. Now you are bringing M2 closer to M1. So what happens? As M2 moves towards M1, the distance decreases. As the distance decreases, you can see that the effective potential energy increases and the kinetic energy decreases, whereas the total energy remains a constant. So you move close. Finally, when you reach at this particular point, what happens? The effective potential energy becomes equal to the total energy and the kinetic energy becomes zero. And this point is known as the turning point. Why is it called the turning point? If you try to bring M2 further close to M1, what happens? You are entering this region, and as I said earlier, here the potential energy is greater than the total energy. In other words, this is the forbidden region. So you cannot bring M2 closer to M1 beyond this point. So beyond this point, if you try to bring M2 closer to M1, what actually happens is the separation distance is going to increase. So the particle is going to move in the opposite direction. So that's why this is known as the turning point. So at the turning point, as I said, the kinetic energy is zero, and if you look at the radial velocity, half mu r dot square, since kinetic energy is zero, the radial velocity is going to be zero and the motion is purely tangential. And what's the value of this turning point? So let's get a clue from the diagram itself. So initially this is the position of M1, this is M2, and these two move towards each other. So what happens? Their separation distance decreases. Finally, when they pass on each other, so when you look at this point, when they pass each other, so here you can see that the separation distance is B, right? Now if M2 moves further towards the right and M1 moves further towards the left, what happens? Their separation distance is going to again increase. So B is the minimum distance, right? So essentially B is your turning point. We can prove this mathematically. So from this diagram we can see that at the turning point, the effective potential energy equals the total energy. So E equal to U effective. So E is half mu V naught square. U effective is half mu V naught square B square by RT square. So the half mu V naught square is common on either side. Cancel that. You get B square by RT square equal to 1 or RT equal to. So turning point is the distance of the closest approach of the particle. So as I said, if you cross the turning point, what happens? If you try to bring them closer beyond this point, that doesn't happen, and you will find that actually the separation distance is going to increase. So they are going to move in the opposite direction. So it's like you bring M2 closer to M1, so you can come to a certain minimum distance. Beyond that, you cannot bring M2 closer. After that, if you apply the force, actually M2 will be moving in the opposite direction. It's like M2 bounces off the effective potential barrier. So at this point, effective potential acts as a barrier. So you cannot cross this point. You will find that the particle bounces off from this barrier and the separation distance again increases. Let's apply this finding into the classic problem of planetary motion. So we know that planetary motion is governed by the central force or the attractive central force known as the gravitational force given by F of r equal to minus g m1 m2 by r square, where g is the gravitational constant. So the corresponding potential F is equal to minus grad u. So from this you can find the potential energy equal to minus g m1 m2 by r, and the effective potential energy equal to L square by 2 mu r square plus u of r. So this is minus g m1 m2 by r plus L square by 2 mu r square. As you can see, effective potential energy has two components. First one is the gravitational potential, and the minus sign indicates that this is an attractive potential. So you have an attractive gravitational potential. The second term is the centrifugal potential. The sign is positive, meaning this is a repulsive potential. So you have a repulsive centrifugal potential. So you have two complementary potential, one attractive potential, one repulsive potential. Depending on the distance, one of them will be dominant. Now we can analyze this scenario once again using the energy diagram. So first let's draw the attractive potential and the repulsive potential separately. So if you look at the attractive gravitational potential, this is a 1 over r function. So this is going to be your attractive potential, it is a negative function. And the repulsive potential L square by 2 mu r square, this is a quadratic function, a parabolic function, a positive function. So this dotted line represents the centrifugal potential. And the combination of these two is given by this solid curve. So this is your effective potential curve. Now, if you compare the attractive potential and the repulsive potential, you can notice that when the value of r is small, so basically if you choose any particular point here for a small r, you compare this height and this height, you will find that the height of the repulsive potential is higher compared to the height of the attractive potential. In other words, for small r, the repulsive centrifugal potential is dominant. On the other hand, if you go to a large r, once again you compare these two heights. At this particular point, you will find that the height of the repulsive potential is smaller than the height of the attractive potential. In other words, for large r, the attractive gravitational potential is more dominant. So for small r, the repulsive potential is dominant. For large r, the attractive potential is dominant. Now, as I said, this is the energy diagram for various values of the total energy. So you have to remember the kinetic energy of the radial motion is given by E minus U effective, and the motion is restricted to region where the potential energy is greater than 0. The nature of the motion is primarily determined by the value of the total energy. So you have four possibilities. 1, total energy greater than 0. 2, total energy equal to 0. 3, total energy less than 0. And finally, total energy is the minimum energy. So let's look at all these possibilities one by one. First, total energy E greater than 0. As I said, total energy by default is a constant, so you have a positive straight line here. So this is E greater than 0. Look at the potential energy curve here. This is the U effective curve. So what do you see? For large r, the motion is unbounded, right? You can have any value of r towards the right side. You can have infinite value for r. It doesn't matter, because even at infinity, you can see that the effective potential energy is lower than the total energy, which is perfectly valid. So in the higher side of r, the motion is unbounded. There is no limit to the separation distance. On the other hand, when you decrease the separation distance, you can come up to this point. Beyond that, if you decrease the distance, what happens? You can see the effective potential energy will be greater than the total energy, which is the forbidden region. So in other words, for small value of r, the motion is bounded by this particular turning point. So on one side, the motion is unbounded, on the other side, motion is bounded. So as we have seen in the previous case, you can bring them up to a particular point. Beyond that, you cannot take them closer because the centrifugal barrier, the centrifugal potential is going to act against it. Right? And this motion, if you look at the trajectory of the particle in this particular scenario, the trajectory corresponds to a hyperbola. We will discuss more about the trajectory in the next class. Okay. Next, E equal to 0. E equal to 0 is almost similar to E greater than 0. In both cases, you will find that for large values of r, the motion is unbounded. For small value of r, the motion is bounded. The only difference between these two is that if you look at the values of the turning point, you will find that in the case of E equal to 0, the value of the turning point is going to be higher than the value in the previous case. But when it comes to the trajectory, there is a big difference. In the case of E greater than 0, the trajectory was a hyperbola, but in this case, the trajectory is going to be a parabola. Moving on to the next case, E less than 0. So let's choose one particular point. Okay, so at this particular point, this is E less than 0. So as always, energy is a constant, so you get a straight line, a negative straight line. Now you look at motion on either side, right? So in the previous two cases, you could have very large values of r. But here that is not possible. If you take a large value of r, suppose you are at this point. Here what do you see? The potential energy is higher than the total energy, which is forbidden, right? So you cannot have very large value of r. So you have an upper limit for r. Similarly, you cannot have a very small value for r. Once again, what happens? If you try to go beyond this point, potential energy is going to be greater than total energy. That's going to be the forbidden region, so you are limited in this side also. So you have essentially two turning points, one lower turning point, one upper turning point, and motion is bounded between these 2 points. In other words, the two particles are going to form a bound system. In this scenario, the trajectory of the particle is going to be an ellipse. Classic example for this is the motion of Earth around Sun. As you know, the orbital of Earth is an elliptical orbital, right? So it has the closest approach point. Similarly, it has a farthest approach point, right? So beyond a particular distance, Earth cannot come closer to Sun. What happens? If it tries to come closer beyond that point, the repulsive centrifugal potential becomes dominant, and that will keep the Earth away from the Sun. Similarly, Earth cannot go beyond a particular distance away from the Sun. Once again, what happens? If it tries to go beyond that particular limit, the gravitational force, the attractive gravitational potential is going to be dominant, and that will bring back the Earth. So Earth has a closest approach, similarly it has a farthest approach. Its motion is bounded by these two limits. So this is an elliptical motion. The final scenario is E equal to E minimum. So if you look at this potential energy curve, this is the minimum energy, right? So if the total energy equal to the minimum energy, what happens? So this corresponds, this is a single point, this corresponds to a single value of r. So throughout the motion r, the separation distance r has a single value. And we know that radius remains a constant only in the case of a circular motion, right? So here the particles stay at a constant distance from each other, and this corresponds to a circular motion. So in the next class we will talk in detail about the elliptical orbital and the hyperbolic orbital. So all these four scenarios are possible only if the angular momentum L is not equal to 0. On the other hand, if L equal to 0, what happens? So as I said, L, the second term corresponds to the centrifugal potential, right? So this is the term which captures the sense of rotation, right? And if the sense of rotation goes, if L equal to 0, what happens? This is a case of two particles moving in a straight line, right? There is no rotational sense there. And since L equal to 0, the repulsive centrifugal force is going to be absent. It is going to be non-existing. So there is no centrifugal barrier to hold the particle apart. So what happens? They are completely controlled by the attractive gravitational force. So they move in a straight line, they collide with each other. So that is a classic collision problem or a scattering problem. On the other hand, if there was some centrifugal barrier, then these two particles cannot come closer beyond a particular point. In other words, they can never touch each other. So if the barrier is not there, they will collide with each other. If the barrier is there, they will never collide. So that's for today. Thank you.